From rehab to the streets, the cycle of homelessness and mental illness in Ibadan by Temilade Aloko. It was a bright morning along the bustling Ele Mokola Road in Ibadan. The roads were alive with the familiar sounds of commerce and movement. Honking vehicles, street traders calling out to customers, and commuters rushing to their destinations. Amid the daily chaos, a group of children moved between vehicles stalled in traffic, begging for money or offering to wipe windshields in exchange for a few naira. They had become part of the landscape, a visible reminder of the poverty that exists alongside the city's economy activity. Among them was a boy known as Abdullahi, not his real name. Unlike the others, he was not moving from car to car that morning. Instead, he lay motionless on a grassy section of the roundabout, seemingly asleep and oblivious to the movement around him. Passers-by paid little attention. Drivers glanced briefly before moving on. Traders nearby continued their daily activities. It was easy to assume he was resting. Hours later, however, Abdullahi remained in the same position, alarmed by the sight. I stopped, raised the alarm, got those around involved, and later we contacted government officials. By the time help arrived, the boy, believed to be not older than 13, had died. His death was quiet, unnoticed by many. His death tragically symbolizes the neglect faced by some of society's most vulnerable members, the homeless. Abdullah's tragic end is not an exception. It reflects a broader humanitarian crisis playing out daily across Ibadan, where homelessness, destitution, and untreated mental illness intersect in ways that exposed thousands of people to danger, disease, exploitation, and premature death. A visible crisis in a growing city. Ibadan is the capital city of Oyo State and one of Nigeria's largest cities. But hidden beneath its growing economy and expanding infrastructure is a population of vulnerable people who survived on the margins. They occupy road medians, markets, underpasses, motor parks, and busy intersections, relying on begging to survive. The challenge extends beyond visible homelessness. According to UNICEF, approximately 1/3 of the children in Oyo State face multidimensional deprivation, such as lacking adequate access to healthcare, nutrition, education, and clean water. These conditions create fertile ground for vulnerability and social exclusion. A research by Dr. Ruth Ochanya Adio Moses, a lecturer at the University of Ibadan, identifies family instability, displacement, substance abuse, and social neglect as major drivers of homelessness and mental health crises within the city. Such factors often combine to create circumstances from which individuals struggle to recover without structured intervention. Mental health expert Dr. Adeniyi Lawal, founder and project director of Emmanuel Rehabilitation Center, Ibadan, classified the affected population into 3 broad categories: people living with severe, untreated mental illness, vulnerable families, and children forced into street begging, and elderly or sick individuals abandoned without support systems. Different phases of vulnerability. A closer look at the people living on Ibadan streets reveals that homelessness is far more complex than commonly assumed. Fausat, a woman in her late 40s, insists she is neither mentally ill nor entirely homeless, widowed nearly 2 decades ago and later losing the child who supported her. She turned to begging as a means of survival while continuing to sell palm kernel oil on weekends whenever possible. Another woman, Oke'badan, once worked as a patent medicine vendor before a debilitating leg infection and marital challenges pushed her into poverty. Her story mirrors those of many others who descend into destitution, begging not with mental illness, but with economic hardship, health challenges, or the collapse of family support systems.
Mo lọ sẹ́kọ̀ọ́ mo lọ ṣiṣẹ́ bẹ́ẹ̀ ni mo ti lásìdẹ́ǹtì ẹsẹ̀ mo sì lọ́kọ ọkọ tí mo fẹ́ kó wà responsible.
For many living on the streets with their children, the motivation is often straightforward: survival, poverty, food insecurity, and unemployment leave them with few alternatives. However, Comrade Kende Akinyemi, JP, a retired Deputy Director of Social Welfare in the Oyo State Ministry of Women Affairs and Chief Executive Officer of the Ibadan Human Rights Center and a mental health advocate, cautions against assuming that every homeless person is mentally ill. According to him, homelessness is driven by a combination of factors including poverty, unemployment, rural-urban migration, and weak social support system. He argues that treating all homeless persons as mentally unstable deepens stigma and often leads to interventions that fail to address the different realities and needs to people living on the streets. The revolving door of evacuations. For years, the Oyo State government has periodically conducted operations to remove beggars, the homeless, and mentally ill persons from public spaces. Officials often justify these exercises as necessary measure to improve public safety, environmental sanitation, and urban order. However, evidence suggests that these interventions rarely produce lasting results. Records shows repeated evacuation exercises over several years, with dozens of individuals removed from the streets and transferred to rehabilitation facilities or hospitals. Yet, many eventually return to the same locations from which they were taken. Comrade Kende Akinyemi, the Chief Executive Officer of the Ibadan Human Rights Center, argues that the problem lies in the absence of sustained rehabilitation strategies. According to him, the government often focuses on clearing visible signs of poverty from public spaces without adequately investing in long-term treatment, reintegration, and economic empowerment. Funding shortages and insufficient professional staffing further weaken rehabilitation efforts.
So, issue of evacuating destitute from the street is one of the major challenges that we have faced in the past, and we are still facing in the society till date. And they returning back to the street has to do with strong political will.
Government officials, meanwhile, point to another challenge: public behavior. The Commissioner for Environment and Natural Resources, Engineer Ademola Temitayo Aderito, argues that roadside donations inadvertently encourage people to remain on the streets. He acknowledges the public health dangers associated with street living, but notes that responsibility for rehabilitation primarily lies with social welfare authorities.
We then realize that there are so much environmental and public health risk associated with homelessness. Government cannot work in isolation. We require key stakeholders and even citizens. So people also encourage them to do much of these things. They bring food and all those things for them. We're not saying don't do it for them. It will be a way of also helping government, but not where they are staying. So that's why we're saying the level of result we have now, we should have gone past it if the people cooperate with us.
Rehabilitation centers under pressure. The shortcomings of the current system become apparent at the Oyo State Rehabilitation Center in Akinyele, situated behind a busy market. The facility bears visible signs of neglect, damaged roofs, cracked structures, stagnant water, and aging infrastructure paints a troubled picture. Despite these conditions, the center houses many vulnerable residents, including widows, elderly persons, displaced individuals, and people living with disabilities. One resident, Sadiq Yusuf, has lived there for 6 years after being evacuated from Mokola. He recalls a period when residents received more consistent support, including feeding and health care. Today, however, many fend largely for themselves. Some operate small businesses within the facility, while others return to the streets to beg during the day.
The time that this government enter, which they ask people not to be living, more especially beggars on the streets begging, and people are living anywhere begging, they make this place to be their own personally, so that they pack people from so many places in Oyo State, come drop them here, and the first time that they brought them here, everything is okay. There's security, there are places, more especially the war.
According to Sadiq, the absence of specialized care and effective monitoring allows mentally ill residents to wander away unnoticed. His account highlights a critical weakness in the system. Removing people from the street is easier than ensuring they receive treatment, protection, and sustainable reintegration. Private intervention filling public gaps. While public facilities struggle, private organizations have attempted to bridge the gap. The Emmanuel Rehabilitation Center has quietly partnered with successful Oyo State government for over 40 years. The aging, cash-strapped center, marked by rusted roofs and worn walls, stands in stark contrast to a modern psychiatric hospital. Yet, behind this modest facade lies a system that has successfully treated, rehabilitated, and reintegrated hundreds of mentally ill individuals swept from the streets. The center's founder and project director, Dr. Adeniyi Lawal, explains that government evacuations regularly deliver batches of 30 to 60 individuals at a time. Many arrive malnourished, traumatized, and completely disconnected from their families. We bathe them, feed them, medicate them, and sometimes trace their families.
Once the government gives the order and it provides us vehicle and the funds to be using for that thing, and the government can bring when they are funding whatever the mode they want to do, and that might do whatever, so that this thing will be a continuum exercise. Through that, some of these things will get out of it, especially those with minor cases that have turned them to the street, apart from the drug addictions, which they need to be treated and rehabilitated. Government, I'm only appealing to government to make a direct contact with us, so that things will be done appropriately. All these things on the street, once we have a vehicle and we have the supporting funds for the program, then it will be a continuum, just like the former governor. Right?
According to Lawal, this stabilization process has yielded genuine success stories, with many former residents returning to school, learning vocational skills, securing jobs, or uniting with long-lost relatives. His warning is stark. Without adequate funding for family tracing, economic empowerment, and long-term support, many rehabilitated individuals will eventually
thousands of people have passed through me,
and return
and they are now normal. They've gone to school. Some of them are becoming a senator. Important person in the society. Some have traveled out. They have money. It's because of the cost of a small thing make them to run to nothing. Even some that are on drugs, they are no more taking drugs. When they are treated and they are being educated and they are able to know the cause of their problem. So we have so many that are in the popular personality now. They are well to do a really independent life without any problem and no relapse again.
Beyond charity, addressing root causes. Many stakeholders agree that roadside charity, while well-intentioned, cannot solve the crisis. Instead, they advocate redirecting donations to structured rehabilitation programs that provide treatment and long-term support. Community leaders argue that homelessness in Ibadan is driven by deeper structural problems. These include unemployment, family breakdown, substance abuse, inadequate mental health services, weak social protection systems, and inconsistent government policies that change with successful administrations. The Oyo State House of Assembly has begun examining the issue more closely, with lawmakers calling for greater oversight of rehabilitation facilities and stronger reintegration programs. However, concerns remain regarding funding transparency and policy implementation. The death of Abdullahi is more than a tragic anecdote. It represents the human cost of systemic failures that leave vulnerable individuals without protection, treatment, or hope. Across Ibadan, mentally ill persons, abandoned children, widows, migrants, and the elderly continue to occupy public spaces where they face daily risk to their health, safety, and dignity. The evidence from rehabilitation centers, government interventions, and community experiences points to a common conclusion: evacuation alone is not rehabilitation. Without sustained funding, effective mental health services, social support systems, economic empowerment programs, and policy continuity, the streets will continue to reclaim those who have nowhere else to go.
You can see a lot of destitutes are all around the Ibadan, in Bodija, Makola, Jube. All the highway gate, all the main road of the day, you will see them every blessed day. And there's a time that they have a building for them to manage the destitute through the Ministry of Human Affairs. The money, I think they need to revisit that place and do the needful. They are increasing every day. So that's a thing. And you can see your state road now, it has been fixed, and the mega city. So I think those are the things that is triggering the environment. I see them myself, and people complain about it. You see them on the middle of the road every day. They need to do more, because if you are doing something and you are still going back to the same way, I think they need to have a well environment for them and give them some empowerment. And while at least a training empowerment, some people should have some things. And the people that need to go to the school, back to school, they should also do the needful. I think that's the only way they can curb all those things.
Until that reality changes, Ibadan's most vulnerable residents will remain trapped in a cycle that begins on the streets, passes through rehabilitation facilities, and too often returns them to the same conditions from which they were rescued.